Now, it's good to stay informed on the latest trends within the rental market. That's why I caught up with property journalist Jenny Hammond to discuss the latest property headlines. So Jenny, could we discuss Osborne's budget and the implications for tenants? Because tax breaks have been removed on the interest for buy-to-let mortgages, so how would you expect that to impact on the market?
The tax breaks on buy-to-let mortgage are costing the Exchequer £6 billion a year. Now that seems like a huge sum, but what he's proposing is to cut these tax breaks down from 40% to 20%. So actually he's not going to recoup that £6 billion. Now the reason he's doing this is because the buy-to-let market is burgeoning at the moment, and this has been made worse by the fact that the Pensions Freedom Act that came into play in April this year has meant that over 55s can actually take out a lump sum from their pensions, and a lot of them are doing this and they're going and taking out buy-to-let mortgages to buy a property, and then they can have a monthly income. So this is flooding the market, which means that first-time buyers can't get on that property ladder at all. It's a very tricky one because if you look at different medias, if you go to the sort of left-wing media, they're saying this is going to bump up prices. I've heard people say as much as 5 to 7%.
Right.
But then if you look at other publications, the FT, the Telegraph, they're saying there's going to be very little impact, because you have to remember that prices for rent, especially in London, are already at a market high.
Yes.
So there's not actually that much room for them to go. So it's all very well saying they're going to bump it up, but they can't really bump them up much further now.
Do you think it could be that landlords could end up passing on some of their costs to the tenants in perhaps hidden ways?
This is a business for them, and of course if taxes are raised, what happens? They sort of pass on that cost, of course, to the customer, which is the tenant. But I think George Osborne has sort of thought that through, because he's also made the wear and tear allowance, which landlords previously were able to claim. He's not abolished that, but he said, as before, you were allowed to claim that and you didn't have to prove that you were doing anything to your property. Now you have to supply receipts and that sort of thing to actually prove that you are repairing that faulty boiler, you are taking out that mouldy sofa from a property, which actually I think means for a lot of tenants, their properties are going to go to better quality. So it's probably good news for them.
Now, this is actually being phased in from 2017 over the next 4 years from then. So do you think we're likely to see an immediate impact, or is this something more long-term?
Once an announcement is made like this, the market reacts. So obviously landlords, estate agents, they're going to plan for this now. They want to be ahead of the trend. So if there are going to be changes, they will happen now. They're not going to wait for 2017. A third of all landlords only have mortgages. So I don't think that's actually going to affect the entire market as a whole, because they're not going to be able to push up prices to the extent to really sort of knock-on effect to the two-thirds.
So overall, good news or bad news for generation rent?
It's very hard to tell. Of course, there might be some rent increases, but you know, it's hard to say whether that's because of these buy-to-let mortgages, or if it's just because the population is increasing or inflation is going up. Rents are always rising. I can't see it having a significant impact, to be entirely honest with you.
Jenny, was there anything else to come out of the budget that you think may have an impact on the market?
The major thing to come out of it is the local housing allowance. Now they're going to freeze that amount for 4 years' time. Now it does sound very sensible doing that, of course, especially if you're a taxpayer looking in. But the problem is, if prices do rise, that's not going to take that into account. The other thing that's going to happen is they're cutting the relief for under 25s. So it means that sort of 16, 18-year-olds, it's not going to become an option for them anymore just to sort of move house and take a social house as soon as they turn 16 or 18.
Now, there's something in the budget with regard to renting a room. Do you think that would likely affect tenants?
Previously, you were able to rent out a room and you get tax back. You could claim the tax back on £4,250. Now that's gone up to £7,500, which means actually you can earn an income of £7,000 tax-free, which means that people are going to free up a lot more of their rooms to capitalise on this. And I think it's interesting because it gives people more options. I've actually been a lodger, and it has its good points and it has its bad points. The good points are, if you're actually living with a live-in landlord, they tend to take much better care of their property. But that said, it does sort of feel like it's never quite your home. It always feels like you're sort of living in someone else's house.
But perhaps a solution short term while you look for your ideal property could be to move in.
The market is so difficult at the moment that you can feel like you're rushed into taking the first property you see and you'll be compromising on so many things and you won't be happy in that property. You don't have to do that. You can shop around and perhaps become a lodger for 1-3 months until you find your perfect place, and then you can really commit to that sort of 1-year contract before you do it.
Jenny, thank you very much.
Thank you.